On this episode of the Catholic Echo podcast from the Diocese of Youngstown, brought to you by the annual Diocesan Appeal and Cumulus Radio Youngstown, we're talking about the Society of St. Paul and Cursillo Ministry Anniversaries with Bishop David Bonnar, Father Matthew Roehrig SSP, Father Jim Korda, and Bill Joyce. Find more about this episode's topic, including articles from the Catholic Echo, at www.catholicecho.org/podcast. And now the host of the Catholic Echo podcast, Dennis Viviana.
Welcome to the Catholic Echo podcast. Joining me to discuss the topics of church anniversaries and priest jubilees is Bishop David Bonnar. Thanks as always.
My pleasure, Dennis. It's great to be with you.
Now this year we recognize 7 priests who are celebrating anywhere from 25 years to 50 years in religious life. I made it a point to read each biography profiled in last month's issue of the Catholic Echo magazine. Now, although each person has their own calling and journey, really they all share a common purpose.
Absolutely. I always enjoy celebrating the lives of our priests. And what's most noteworthy for me are their stories. They're unique, they're special, they're different, but indeed, there's one common strand. They are all priests forever in the line of Melchizedek, and they all want to serve God and serve the church. And as we look at their stories, we see that they do that in a myriad of ways with all kinds of gifts. It's something that indeed we really need to celebrate and be grateful for.
Now you're approaching 40 years in the Catholic priesthood. Have you had the chance to reflect upon your journey in faith? Does that seem like a whirlwind? Do you remember little details and nuances at each place you've been?
There's a Latin expression, tempus fugit, which means time flies. I just celebrated 36 years of being a priest, and in January I will celebrate 4 years of being a bishop, and it's like the wind. It's come and it's gone, and it's been so quick, but it's been so full and so exciting. Every day when I pray, have a chance. There are those moments when God blesses me with a revelation of, looking back in time and just, seeing his handprint. So it's hard to look at it in full. It's kind of like a baseball player or any athlete. It's hard to reflect when you're in action. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there'll come a time when I can be more intentional in the reflection, but it does seep through where God wants me to see something or know something or hear something.
Mm-hmm. As that nearly 40 years in the Catholic priesthood, when you're approached by seminarians or new priests, I guess what's the most frequently asked question you receive from them?
So when I was a parish priest, I think the most frequent question was, how and when did you know that you were being called to be a priest? And of course, that goes way back to my childhood, to when I was a young boy. I was always just drawn to that. Now that I'm a bishop, the question is, how did you get the call from the Holy Father? Where were you? What were you doing? And what's it like to be a bishop? So those are some of the questions, and all of which help me to reflect more deeply on both of those realities in my life.
That call, did you know that it was coming at that point? And what do you recall from that phone call?
So it was November 9th, and it was 1:40 in the afternoon. I was at my new assignment of St. Aidan Parish in Wexford, which is in the Pittsburgh Diocese. I had the afternoon free. So I had changed. I got in my car to go to the local park, and I would walk. It's a 5-mile walk around North Park. And I had my phone in my back pocket, and I took it out when I sat down, and I looked at the phone, and I could see somebody from Washington, D.C. was calling me. I didn't know who it was. So I answered, and lo and behold, it was the Apostolic Nuncio, at the time Archbishop Christophe Pierre. He's now His Eminence Cardinal Christophe Pierre. He asked me if I was David Joseph Bonnar, and I said yes, and he told me who he was, and he said, "Are you alone?" And I said yes. He said, "Well, you may want to sit down for what I'm about to tell you." And then he told me, and I was just overwhelmed to the point that I began to cry, not that I don't cry, but it was very unusual for me, but I was so floored by this. And then he says, "But do you accept?" And I said, "By the grace of God and in total humility, I accept." And then the hard part came. I couldn't talk about it with anyone except a few people that he had directed me to speak with. And so, I had to go back to the parish after that long walk, convene a finance council meeting, and pretend like I was still going to be there.
Wow. What a wonderful story, Bishop. Thank you for sharing that. Now, the diocese has vowed religious serving anywhere from 25 to 85 years. Their celebration held at Teresa of Calcutta Parish in Warren. What is your message to those men and women who have dedicated their lives to various orders?
Gratitude. I'm so grateful for their life and ministry. They are a witness to us, even those who are retired. They have so much to give, especially in the way of prayer. I also, want to say the hope they bring to us, because their lifestyle points to something well beyond this world that we all aspire to realize in heaven. And then the other message I would give is perseverance. Any journey, any sense of discipleship of following the Lord is never easy, because it always involves the cross. Jesus says, if you want to be my follower, you need to take up your cross, follow in my footsteps. So I just encourage them to continue to persevere.
Now, St. Paul's Monastery turns 80 this year. I recently had the chance to speak with Father Matthew Roehrig, head of the local Society of St. Paul. There are only 7 brothers remaining, but quite the legacy of being beacons of communication, spreading the good word of God for generations. What do you take away from their ministry over the years?
Well, even before I became bishop, I was familiar with this community, because as a young priest in Newcastle, I was learning how to be a priest. And it just so happened that in Southern Park Mall, they had a store called Alba House. And so
Yes.
I would often come to the mall, go to that store, and I would purchase homily books or other worthwhile books. I even remember using a tape from the late Father Jeffrey Mickler for a retreat. So I'm well aware of their great ministry. Of course, that's been the campus for CTNY for many years for the Diocese of Youngstown. A few months ago, was out there at the monastery, and I got to celebrate a Mass commemorating those 80 years, and we were joined by their superior, and it was just a wonderful experience being with the community.
They also have plans for a rosary garden. Their facilities used for retired brothers and priests. Why do you think that's important, that their mission continues with that as well?
Well, I think we're not just about work, we're about family, and we need to take care of each other. And so there's a responsibility that comes in that regard. And so it's a beautiful campus. And, if you've ever been out on 224, they also have a shrine there. And people will sometimes stop and just, pull over and pause and pray a prayer at the shrine. They also have a bookstore there, religious goods store. And that's a great place if you need books or medals, rosaries, all kinds of possibilities.
Thank you again, Bishop Bonnar. Coming up next, I speak with Father Matthew Roehrig from the Society of St. Paul in Ellsworth Township, that's just outside Canfield, as he talks about their continuing mission and reflects upon his own 40 years in religious life. Much more when the Catholic Echo podcast returns.
Join Catholic Charities for our first ever Chefs for Charity event on September 26th at the Eastwood Event Center, hosted by Bishop David Bonnar. Enjoy delicious dishes from 24 local restaurants while supporting housing and homeless programs at Catholic Charities. Visit our website at ccdoi.org for tickets and details.
Our founder, Blessed James Alberione, was one who thought that if St. Paul were alive today, he would be using the media to communicate the Word of God. So that's why we were chosen.
The Society of St. Paul, or Paulines, was founded on August 20th, 1914 in Alba, Italy, by Blessed James Alberione. The order has a presence in 39 countries across the globe, with 850 members. Locally in the Diocese of Youngstown, there are 7 members who continue to spread the gospel's message through print and other forms of media.
Television, bookstores, of course, to promote materials, and we're now getting into podcasts, and around the world there's different ones. Some have schools that they're teaching communications, others use the media, the internet, the social media.
Reverend Matthew Roehrig is the director of the Society of St. Paul in Ellsworth Township, just outside Canfield. He's a graduate of Morehead State University, earning a degree in communications, which led him to the Society of St. Paul. One might ask what the ministry of a brother might look like.
They will not do Mass, they will not hear confessions, they will not do the sacraments. But all other aspects that we do, from editorial to the marketing and promoting to the technical work, can be done by the brothers.
And the prayer life of a brother starts with morning Mass.
If it's a formation community, there might be some structured prayer either before or after Mass. Otherwise, it's usually up to the individual. And then every evening, we have a holy hour, which our founder called the Visit, where we go visit with the Lord, and we do an exposition of the Blessed Sacrament.
Outside the church on the campus is a prayer chapel, a future rosary garden, cemetery for 24 past St. Paul members, as well as St. Paul's Books and Gifts, also known in past generations as Alba House.
But out here, we're trying to create a more prayerful atmosphere so people can come out and walk around and be peaceful and visit our statues. Most of our books originally were designed for priests and religious and those who are teaching.
Father Roehrig says what he's most excited about moving forward is celebrating the first anniversary as the Mexico-Cuba-United States province. He says it's been a rewarding experience over the decades in the Mahoning Valley, and he looks forward to the future in making sure his fellow brothers and priests are well taken care of.
This is our retirement home, so many of the members that are here are in their 80s, and we set this up so we take care of their needs. We're going to be starting a rosary garden here. Part is a fundraising to give us some fundings for some of the things we need to do here, but as I said, to create this space where people can come out and they could walk and pray the rosary. We have the Stations of the Cross. We have our shrine to St. Anthony out front, and our chapel is open during the day. So we're trying to create a place where people can come for the future and just find it a very peaceful place.
I also had the chance to catch up with Father Jim Korda, who worked closely over the years with the brothers as they made the transition into broadcast television. Joining me now is Father Jim Korda, host of Wineskins, radio and TV pioneer, and former president of the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown, better known as CTNY. Father, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us.
Dennis, my pleasure to be here with you today.
I wanted to talk about your experience with brothers from St. Paul Monastery in Ellsworth, where CTNY studios were located. What can you tell me about the early days of CTNY and the men who shared that passion for media, such as yourself, and getting out the Word of God?
My association with them really started back in 1985 when I assumed the position of being involved with communications with the Diocese of Youngstown. And at the time, the communication office was really newly founded there at the monastery in Canfield, just a year or two prior to that. And we were embarking on the burgeoning gift of cable television, which was really, back then, something new. And for us as a diocese, but also for the community itself, to embark on this new venture together, using cable television to get the word out, to celebrate the good news, but also to do it in an ecumenical spirit, was what we all started with.
Now, we talked earlier, you said if you weren't a priest, you would have taken a much different path, and as far as media, you were sort of invited into it.
I was. As a matter of fact, back in 1984, Father Bob Bono, who was moving out of the Office of Communication into another office, had invited me to look into and to become more familiar with television broadcasting, in particular religious broadcasting. And so I had studied at Marquette and also Loyola in New Orleans, and I kind of knew that that was different for me because that was not my passion. My passion really was architecture and design. That's what I was interested in doing. And then when this came about, kind of switched gears, and I discovered that that was a gift that I had that I could share, but also a gift that became more developed over these many years.
You began to embrace it, yeah.
Exactly.
Why do you think it's important to strike that balance between informative and formative through print, radio, broadcasting, books, and TV?
Well, you know, as I look at the mass media, I see it as a great gift from God. And that includes print, radio, television, and now, of course, social media. And so anytime we use those gifts of telecommunication, we have to be familiar with why we are using them. And as church, we use them for the benefit of the church, but also the benefit of the greater community to learn more about who we are as Christian people, who we are as people of faith in general, and who we are in a more ecumenical way to share those things that we have in common with other people of faith.
Mm-hmm. Now, really is some challenging times here in the Catholic Church. Many millennials and Generation Z have turned away from the church. Maybe some receive the sacraments but are not actively participating in their faith. What advice would you have for them, and how can we continue to reach them through media?
I think it's always important for us to keep the door open, You know, for us as seasoned Catholics, sometimes we get, at least myself personally, get intimidated by the younger crowd. And yet they have so much to offer us, so many gifts to give us. And I think it's important for us to work with all different kinds of people, of different age groups, of different faith backgrounds, and to know that we're kind of in this together, that it's not us against them, but it's us together working for the good of the church, for the benefit of the community, and not be afraid to reach out to those that might be different age that we are or different faith background than we are.
Of course, in July, the National Eucharistic Congress, I think movements like that, something that hasn't been done in 80 years, is very important for the younger generations as well.
It is, and I think the younger generation can certainly learn from us seasoned Catholics, and vice versa. We as seasoned Catholics can certainly learn from the younger generation as well.
Father James Korda, catch him every week, Wineskins, on your favorite podcasting platform. Make sure to keep it here on the Catholic Echo podcast. Next, Call and Vote speaks with Bill Joyce of the Cursillo movement of the Youngstown Diocese, celebrating their 60th anniversary. Much more when we return.
Wondering what happened to timely Catholic news in the Diocese of Youngstown? It's at CatholicEcho.org. Sign up for the email newsletter while you're there to have Catholic news delivered to your inbox.
Welcome back to the Catholic Echo podcast. My name is Colin Vogt, and I'm here with Bill Joyce, the lay director for the Cursillo movement of the Youngstown Diocese. How you doing, Bill?
Colin, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. We are going to be talking about the Cursillo movement. So, Bill, what's your role with the Cursillo movement of Youngstown Diocese?
I'm the lay director, lay coordinator of the movement, so I oversee everything that happens in the Youngstown Diocese with regards to Cursillo. When we do a Cursillo weekend or we've got some event following, like we had our 60th anniversary this year. So anything that has to do with Cursillo, I oversee.
And do you coordinate with someone here in the offices?
Yes, we are very fortunate to have Father Edward Brins as our spiritual advisor for the Cursillo movement. And we work very closely with Father Brins.
Cursillo is a very popular movement, but for those who don't know, what can you tell me about the origins of the Cursillo movement and how it came to be in Youngstown?
Sure. Cursillo actually was founded in Majorca, Spain around 1949. That's when the first weekends were held. It was designed to help bring young men back to the church. There was a falling away. And so that was the creation of the movement. And it was funded by Eduardo Bonin along with Bishop Juan Hervas. And it went through a series of various forms, but then the weekend finally was established to pretty much the same weekend we do today. So from 1949 on, it's been an unbroken line of the same types of weekends. So anyone from 1949 that would attend a weekend today would find it very familiar.
Is that the first year that they started doing the weekend retreat, is 1949?
1949 in Majorca, Spain. Then from there, it came to the United States. There were two airmen from Spain who were taking some aeronautical lessons in Texas. So they brought Cursillo with them. And the first weekend in the United States was conducted in Texas in the 1950s in Waco. And that was a Spanish weekend. And then from there, I came to the English language formation for the Cursillo weekend. It landed here in Youngstown in 1964. So we were pretty early on.
Yeah. Innovators here in Youngstown.
And the first weekend was held at St. Edward's up on the north side of Youngstown, and very well attended, and it's been going ever since. We used to do 4 weekends a year, 2 women's and 2 men's. They're done separately. Now we do 1 men's weekend a year and 1 women's weekend a year. They're well attended. In the Youngstown Diocese, we've had over 7,500 people participate in Cursillo weekend.
Wow, that's amazing. What strikes me about that story of the origin of Cursillo is, as you say, like the young men were falling away, and this was designed to bring them back. I think we look at the environment for the church now, and we feel the same way, that young people are kind of falling away, and we need to bring them back. And in some way, it's encouraging for me that, this is not a problem that is just unique to today. There have been ebbs and flows throughout the history of the church where people have fallen away, and it's come surging back as well. So what else can you tell me about the Cursillo retreat weekend, the formation of the event, and what kind of goes on?
I do want to mention, before we go any further, that we're very happy to have the support of Bishop David Bonnar, as well as several other bishops in the Youngstown Diocese have supported the weekends. So what the weekends are, basically, they begin on a Thursday evening, and they run until Sunday afternoon. And candidates will stay right at the location. They don't go back and forth. They'll stay right there, and they'll hear a series of talks both by clergy and by lay people. There will be Mass every day, an opportunity to go to reconciliation, receive communion. I will tell you about the kitchen. They will eat like royalty. It's the food is just wonderful. We have very dedicated people in the background who are working to make sure that everything is supplied, anything that the candidates would need on the weekend. Wonderful experience.
Yeah, in our July issue, I did an article on all the retreat and pilgrimages that people can do around the diocese and just outside the diocese as well. We wanted to go for about a 3-hour drive. And what I noticed from talking to all these places and from retreats I've been on in the past is that nobody ever eats poorly at any of these retreats. The food is always, emphasized. I guess that's just part of being Catholic. What I understand about the Cursillo movement as well is that the weekend is really just the start.
That's correct. The weekend really is an opportunity for people to spend 3 days getting to know their faith better, getting closer to Christ, and learning about their faith. Cursillo is actually a Spanish word that means course, but the full name of the weekend is a Cursillo de Cristiandad, which is a short course in Christianity. And that's really what it's about. So people will come away with an enhanced understanding of their faith, and many people will tell you it's one of the most important things they've done in their life. We've had a lot of people who have made weekends over the years and have gone on to become very active in the church. I made my Cursillo weekend back in August of 1995. Just was a wonderful experience. What I love about Cursillo, which is a little different than some of the other weekends that one can do, Cursillo does not leave you sort of hanging after the weekend. You never hear from these folks again. Cursillo has a method where people can hook back up if they want to and come back to something we call Altrea. And Altrea is a group meeting of people who have done Cursillo weekends. It could be as far back as 64. We have a lot of people who are more recent, though. And we meet once a month at Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And that's where we spend maybe about an hour, hour and a half. And we get together with other folks who have made the Cursillo weekend. We hear a witness that's usually about 10 minutes long. And then we share with each other our piety, our study, and our actions. So what are we reading and what are we doing to be active within the church?
And that's one of a couple of things that people who have done the Cursillo retreat do afterwards. There's also a small group formation that they do as well, right?
Exactly. A small group basically will follow the weekend. We try to get people organized in a small group. It could be 3 people, it could be 5 people. They can meet on their own schedule. They can meet, once a week, once a month, however they want to meet. But it's basically an opportunity for people to share with each other, and whatever is said in small group stays in small group. Same thing on the weekend. Whatever you say on the weekend stays there. We have a confidentiality agreement that you can feel very open and share because that's not going to get repeated anywhere. So the small groups are organized among 3 to 5 people, meeting at their own pace, and again, they're going to share their study, their faith. Now, the group that I'm in has been continuously meeting every 2 or 3 weeks for 26 years.
Oh my gosh, wow.
That's how much we all love it.
Wow, that's amazing.
So we have a group of 5 gentlemen, and some of us made that particular weekend in 95, a few made the weekend in 96, but we've stayed together all these years. I
mean, just to have that really tight-knit community of faith to go through, so many years together with, I mean, to see the changes in life and everything, and to have that support, is such a powerful part of our faith community. It just enriches our own faith as well.
Yeah, we've been through weddings and baptisms, some of our relatives, but we have that to share with each other.
Now that you've turned the conversation towards your own experience, let me delve a little deeper on that. I just wanted to ask, what brought you to your own Cursillo weekend? I just want to understand the situation that motivated you to that so that, people can understand what they, may be feeling as well.
Donuts.
Just the donuts.
Well, there were a group of fellows, men and ladies from our church, that after Mass on Sunday would gather at each other's home for donuts. And it was a donut group. I didn't know anything about Cursillo, but several of these gentlemen had made Cursillo, had worked on Cursillo teams, and were cognizant of the great impact that it could have on a young family.
Yeah.
So they invited me to come to Cursillo weekend. I said, sure. I didn't know anything about Cursillo. I made the weekend, and I found out that, later, as I look back at this grouping of people, we're all people who love the Lord. They all wanted to be able to do something to bring other people to Christ, and it was being active in the movement and having that fellowship together. That's what really brought me into it. As I made the weekend and I saw how impactful it was, I wanted to get more involved in the church. That's when I joined the Knights of Columbus and had already been singing at church.
Yeah, you've got those silver pipes over
I
there.
don't know about that. But I've been singing with the choir, and I became a lector. And then as things went along, I became a lay leader of prayer some years later. It has had a tremendous effect.
You mentioned that it's the 60th anniversary this year.
Yes.
But what is the 60th anniversary of the Cursillo movement here in the Diocese of Youngstown mean both to you personally and for the diocese in general?
I mentioned earlier that Cursillo was started in Youngstown here in 1964. That's 60 years ago. And that we've had 7,500 people come through the Cursillo movement. What it means to me is that I'm seeing this wonderful involvement of people sharing their faith, getting together regularly, and looking in ways that they can help the church through their small groups that they have organized. Personally, it's just so gratifying to see how everybody is involved. And it's just so wonderful to see everybody working together, working to put these weekends together. We have days of reflection every year where we go back and examine Scripture and see what we can pull from that. We've heard some wonderful talks from clergy and religious to help bolster our faith.
So just in closing, is there anything coming up for the Cursillo movement here that you'd like to let our listeners know about?
Yes, absolutely. We have a men's Cursillo weekend that's going to take place October 3rd through the 6th. That's going to be held at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church Hall, which is next door to the Basilica. We are open for a Catholic man who can receive the sacraments and would like to further their growth in their faith, learn more about it. We'd love to welcome them to come. You do have to fill out an application to do that. And the applications are available. They can either give me a call. I can give you my telephone number now or my email address. Email address would be Youngstown Cursillo. Cursillo is spelled Cursillo @gmail.com. If they just drop a line to that email address, I'll get back to them and I can send them the application and give them more details about that. The address, if they want to drop a line to our post office box, Youngstown Cursillo, Post Office Box 3196, Youngstown, Ohio, 44513-3196.
He's got that memorized.
Yeah, I go to the box almost every day.
Yeah. All right. Where can people go to sign up for a retreat or learn more about it?
Give me a call. My telephone number is area code 330-540-9602. I'll repeat that, 330-540-9602. My name is Bill Joyce, and I would welcome those calls and tell you anything you'd like to know.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Bill. We really appreciate you joining us today. And the Cursillo movement just sounds like such a wonderful thing that we do here in the Diocese of Youngstown.
It is.
So
Yeah.
Congratulations on 60 years, and we're so lucky to have you as our lay director.
Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, thank you. As always, for more information on the Catholic Echo podcast or our magazine, go to catholicecho.org.
The Catholic Echo podcast is a production of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Your host has been Dennis Biviano. Have a blessed day, and may God be with you.